Okay, so there is a sphere like this. Okay, and in the case of a gradient, you consider a small point P. Okay, and the net outward flux to this point P is given by del dot A, where A is the vector through that point, or A is the flux to that point. Now, the divergence theorem states that if you add up such small strips or small points along the volume, then you will get the total outward flux, which is basically the integration of del dot A along the whole volume. So, in other words, I can say integral over the whole volume del dot A dV is equal to the total outward flux. Along with this, we have seen in surface integral, if you consider a surface, okay, this is a surface, it's not a volume. And if you consider a small strip like this, the net outward flux of the vector A through the surface of a strip ds was integral over the surface A dot ds. Okay, so the net along the surface, if you consider the whole surface, you can consider small strips like this, and you can add up the flux through each of the strips, and you will finally get the total outward flux of A through that surface. And both the divergence and the surface integral indicate the same thing. Okay, so this is also actually equal to the total outward flux. So because the flux needs to be come out through the surface only, which means if you do a volume integration of the divergence, or if you do a surface integration of the flux, you will get the final total outward flux through that surface or through that volume, which means I can write in general the surface integral of the vector A dot ds is equal to the volume integral of the divergence along the volume dv. And this is a very important relationship. Okay, why? See, I have given it as a volume integral. So basically, when I do this along the volume del dot A dv, it basically means there's a triple integral because the volume is along the three dimensions del dot A dv. Okay, so dv means along, if it is a cube, it is along the length, along the width, and along the height. So this dv will be dh, dw, and da. Okay, if it is a cube. Similarly, if it is a sphere, then you will have the radius, the angle that we have seen in the spherical coordinates. Okay, so don't confuse the single integral with a normal integral here. The single integral here, if you represent it as v, it means that there are triple integrals. Similarly, the surface integral A dot ds is actually the double integral. So there should be a arrow here, A dot ds. Because surface means it is a two-dimensional thing, and the area of the surface is basically double integral. It is along, if it is a rectangle, it is along the width and the height. If it is a circle, then it is along the radius and along the angle it traverses when we change the radius. Okay, so don't get confused with the notation of single integral here. It is actually triple integral if it is volume, and double integral if it is surface. But our main focus is that the relation here is the double integral of a dot ds is equal to the triple integral of del dot a dv, which means there is a relation between double integral and a triple integral. Okay, this relates a double integral and a triple integral. Because whenever we need to do some amount of numerical things, if we have a triple integral, it might be very difficult to do. But instead, if we convert to some kind of a double integral, it might be easier for to do the numerical calculations. So the divergence theorem relates a double integral to a triple integral through the divergence and the surface integral. Okay, that is about the divergence theorem. Next, we look at a new operation called as curl. Curl ചെയ്യുക, ചുരുണ്ടുകൂടുക എന്നുള്ളതാണ് മലയാളം മീനിങ്. ചുരുണ്ടുകൂടുക means you are trying to circulate, you are trying to rotate. അതാണ് curl. Curling, curl mattress എന്ന് കേട്ടിട്ടില്ലേ, അതുപോലെ curl. So curl is defined as the curl of a vector A is defined as del cross A. Okay. Now, if you look at the physical significance of curl, just like in divergence, we say that the divergence of a vector A is the outward flux per unit volume. Similarly, for a curl, you will have a similar definition, which says the curl of A is an rotational vector whose magnitude is the maximum circulation of the vector A per unit area as the area tends to 0 and whose direction is the normal direction of the area. So that is the definition. It says it's a rotational vector. It's not a linear vector, it's a rotational vector, and whose magnitude, that is, there should be a magnitude for the vector. The magnitude is the maximum circulation of A per unit area. So if you consider any particular unit area, the magnitude gives you the maximum circulation of A in that unit area as the area tends to 0. So when you compress the area to a 0 level, when that area tends to 0, what's the maximum circulation? That gives the magnitude of A, and the direction is the normal direction of the area. And so curl is a cross product, which means it should have some direction, and the direction is the normal or the perpendicular direction to the direction of maximum circulation. That is the definition of curl. Okay, so if you consider a point P, assume in some kind of a surface. So there's a surface here. Consider a point P. Now, let's say that circulating around this point P, there is some vectors. but there is some flex, something like this. Whirlpool എന്ന് കേട്ടിട്ടുണ്ടാവല്ലോ. Whirlpool means some kind of a drainage. So ഭയങ്കരമായിട്ട് വെള്ളം കെട്ടിക്കിടക്കുന്ന സ്ഥലത്ത് പെട്ടെന്ന് ഒരു കുഴി ഉണ്ടാക്കി കഴിഞ്ഞു കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ, നടുക്കൊരു കുഴി ഉണ്ടാക്കി കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ, the water will circulate around that single hole and goes inside. So that's called as a whirlpool. That's circulation. So you are circulating around that single hole. Okay. So the maximum circulation എവിടെയാണോ അതാണ് അതിന്റെ magnitude. Maximum circulation means, for example, in this case, the vectors which are denoted in this violet lines are circulating around P. Okay. And the direction of circulation means if you take your right hand and curl your fingers in the direction of circulation, the direction in which your thumb is pointing will give you the direction of maximum circulation. So in this case, if you curl your right finger along the direction of circulation, then you can see that the direction will be perpendicular to the plane of paper or plane of screen. So it is perpendicular to the plane of screen. So this is called as curl. So if you look at this case, there's a point P and the circulation is like this. So the question is, does it have any kind of circulation? It doesn't, because the vectors are linear. It is crossing the point P. It is not rotating around P. But in this case, there is a rotation around P, or there is a circulation around P. In this case, there is no rotation. It is just passing through the point P. Okay, so here the curl is 0. Okay, here there is a curl which is out of the page. So that is the physical significance of curl. Okay, now let's go to the mathematical part. So you can define curl del cross A in Cartesian coordinate system as A x cap, A y cap, A z cap, dou by dou x, dou by dou y, dou by dou z, the components of A, Ax, capital Ax, capital Ay, Ax, and the determinant of the complete thing. So this is called as the curl. Okay, so if you expand it, you will get finally the curl of A. I can write curl in so this is for Cartesian. I can write curl for cylindrical as you will have the unit vectors A rho cap, rho into A phi cap, A z cap, and then you will have dou by dou rho, dou by dou phi, dou by dou z, and you will have the components along rho into component along phi and Az. Its determinant multiplied by 1 by O. So this is in cylindrical coordinate system. Similarly, I can write for spherical coordinate system del cross A. So this all should be vectors. A is equal to 1 by r square sine theta, determinant AR cap, R A theta cap, R sine theta A phi cap. Then you have dou by dou R, dou by dou theta, and dou by dou phi. Similarly, you have AR, R A theta, R sine theta A phi, and its determinant. So this is in spherical coordinate system. You don't want to know the derivation of all these things. You can just look at the or make use of these formulas in your problems, because you will have some good amount of problems from this session, because it's mostly like uh, equations, etc., etc. Okay. Now, if you look at some of the properties of curl, so you have del cross A plus B is equal to del cross A plus del cross B. Del cross A cross B is equal to A into del dot B minus B into del dot A plus B dot del into A. So these are all vectors, minus A into, sorry, minus A dot del into B. Okay. Similarly, if you do del cross V into A, this is V into del cross A plus del V cross A, where V is a scalar. And there's a special property that the divergence of a curl is zero, which means divergence of curl is equal to zero if you take any vector. Okay. Similarly, the curl of a gradient is equal to zero. Curl of a gradient is equal to zero. So these are some of the properties. Similar to, we have divergence theorem. For curl, you have something called as Stokes theorem. It is not Ben-Stokes, it is a different Stokes. Stokes theorem. Okay. So let me state the theorem. It states that the circulation of a vector field A around a closed path L is equal to the surface integral of the curl of A or let's state it like this. The circulation of a vector field A around a closed path L equal to the circular surface integral of the curl of A, which means if you do the surface integral of del cross A, remember curl is the circulation per unit area. So if you do the integration over the complete area, that will give you the total circulation. And we have seen, so this is the total circulation on a surface. We have also seen previously that if you had considered a closed path with the flex lines passing through it, and if you consider a small strip dl, if you do A dot dl along this closed path, this is basically, you can say, as the circulation along the closed path L. So, which means I can say the surface integral of del cross A is equal to the line integral of A dot dl along the closed path. And this is what Stokes theorem says. So here again you should understand the surface integral doesn't means it is a single integral. It means there is a double integral del cross A dot ds. Okay. So here I can write in general as del cross A dot ds is equal to line integral of A dot ds. So line integral is a single dimensional integral. It is only a single integral. So this relates actually the double integral with a single integral. Okay. So relates double integral with a single integral. Okay. So this is the two theorems that we have depending on the curl or the divergence. Okay. So these are some of the basic mathematical tools that we are going to use in our electromagnetic theory. If you don't understand the concept, that is fine, because when we use it, we will understand it better. But make sure you understand what the formula indicates. Okay, so this will help us to understand much more detail in detail when we look at electromagnetic wave propagation. Okay, so the mathematical part where we look at the different formulas is done. Next, we are going to look at the electrostatics. So electrostatics, we might have studied in your +2 classes, in your first year and second year of BTech, etc., etc. So we will revise that a bit, and then we'll go to magnetostatics. So this module covers electrostatics and magnetostatics, and this initial mathematical formulas. And then in the next module only, we will start with actual electromagnetism. Okay. So when you talk about electrostatics, the first law that comes to your mind is the Coulomb's law. Okay. So let's state the Coulomb's law. So it states that the force F, it's a vector, between two point charges Q1 and Q2 is 1 along the line joining them, 2 directly proportional to the product Q1 Q2 of the charges, and 3, inversely proportional to the square of distance r between them. Okay. So let's understand this theorem. So there is a charge q, q1. There is another charge q2. The q1 will apply some force on q2. In a similar way, the q2 will also apply some force on q1. So force is a vector, and there should be a direction and there should be a magnitude. So there is some magnitude of force which is applied by q1 on q2, and then some magnitude of force which is applied by q2 on q1. And the force applied will be along the line joining them. So if you draw a line like this, the force applied on q1 on q2 and q2 on q1 both will be along the line joining them. Basically, this one will be along the same line. Sorry. So basically, this force which I have drawn above the line will be actually along the line. Okay, so it will be along the line joining them. The force will not come from anywhere else. It will be along the straight line. That means the Q2 cannot apply a force like this, or like this, or like this. It cannot apply such forces. Similarly, on Q1 on Q2, it will be always along the line joining them. The next thing is, so the magnitude of that force is proportional to the product of the charges. Okay, so if I have a charge of, let's say, 1 nanocoulomb here and 2 nanocoulomb here, the force of Q1 on Q2 is proportional to 2 nanocoulombs, or product of this, which is 2 × 10⁻18. Similarly, the force on Q2 on Q1 also is equal to the same. So basically, the force, if there are only two charges, the force on first on the other, the second on the first is same. It is inversely proportional to the square of distance, which means if my distance is r, or let's say r1, if I have some amount of force, if I move q such that it goes far, and now let's say the distance is r2, where r2 is greater than r1, then the force F2, the new force F2, will be less than F1, which means it is inversely proportional. As you move closer to the charge, closer the charges, you will have much higher force. If as you move, separate the charges further, it will be much lesser force. Okay, so those are the statements of Coulomb's law. Now, if I write Coulomb's law in terms of a mathematical formula, then I can write it as, in general, F, the force F, is equal to some constant, proportionality constant, multiplied by the product of charges and inversely proportional to the square of distance. So as you increase the distance, force decreases. As you increase in charge, the force increases. Okay. This proportionality constant K can be written as 1 by 4 pi epsilon 0. Where epsilon 0 is equal to the permittivity of free space. This is equal to, the value is 8.854 into 10 raised to minus 12 farad per meter. Or I can write K as the value 9 into 10 raised to 9 meter per farad. Okay. Now it need not be epsilon 0 if the charges are placed in some kind of a medium where the permittivity is epsilon. So if epsilon is the permittivity, I can write it as the relative permittivity multiplied by the permittivity of free space. Okay, where this is the permittivity of the medium. Okay. Now this we have done in very layman's terms, where we haven't used any kind of vector notations, although it is needed because force is a vector, right? So you see that, let's say there are 2 points, Q1 and Q2. Now we are going to look at in the vector notation how this happens. Okay, so let's say my force Q1 to Q2 is like this along the straight line. Okay, so there is some force which is along this. Let me denote it as F12. Okay, or let me write it in here so that it will be easy. F12, that is from force from 1 to 2. Similarly, there is a force in the opposite direction from Q1 to Q2, Q2 to Q1, and let me write this as F21. The charges Q1 and Q2 will be placed with respect to some point origin O, and it will have a position vector with respect to origin. Okay, let this be R2 and this be R1. Okay, and the distance between these two, let it be R12. Okay, so I can write the force from 1 to 2 as Q1 Q2 by 4 pi epsilon 0 R square along the unit vector R12, where R12 is the difference of the position vectors R2 minus R1, which we have seen already as displacement vector. R is actually the magnitude of the vector R12, and the unit vector R12 is the vector R12 divided by the magnitude of the vector R12. Okay, so if you substitute all this here, you can see that the force F12 is equal to Q1 Q2 by 4 pi epsilon 0 into R2 minus R1, which is the vector R12, divided by R2 minus R1, the magnitude whole cube. Okay, why it came? Because if you look at only this part, okay, so this part means if you substitute the values, you see that it is R12 divided by R12 magnitude multiplied by 1 by R12 magnitude square. So this is equal to R12 vector divided by R12 magnitude cube, which is equal to, where R12 is this one, it is small r2 minus r1 divided by r2 minus r1 magnitude cube. Okay, so this is how you have derived that expression. So you can represent the force in terms of the position vectors of the charges and the distance between the charges. Basically, if you subtract the position vectors and take the magnitude, it will get the distance, and this is how you can get the force. Now F12, if you look at F21, it is the same magnitude but in the opposite direction. Okay, so F21 is in this direction and F12 in this direction, but the magnitude is same. So it will have a minus sign. Okay, and minus sign is occurring because the unit vector is in the opposite direction. Okay, if you have similarly Q1, Q2, Q3 up to Qn number of charges, the net force is given by the superposition principle, which says F is equal to Q1, Q, let's say on the charge Q, the force by Q1, Q2, Q3, and Qn is Q into Q1 by 4 pi epsilon 0. Let the position vector be R minus R1 divided by the magnitude of R minus R1 cube plus Q2 into R minus R2 divided by 4 pi epsilon 0 in the magnitude of R minus R2 whole cube plus up to Q into Qn into R minus Rn divided by 4 pi epsilon 0 R minus Rn cube, where you see there's a charge Q, there's a charge Q1, there's a charge Q2, Q3 up to Qn, and all is exerting a force on Q. Okay, and the position vectors of this with respect to origin is R1, R2 up to Rn. Okay, and the position vector of Q with respect to origin is R. Okay, so which you can finally write as a summation as F is equal to Q by 4 pi epsilon 0 sigma k equal to 1 to n Qk into R minus Rk by magnitude of R minus Rk. Okay, so this is the total force applied on charge Q by different charges Q1 up to Q. Fine. Okay, so we'll stop it here and we'll continue with electrostatics in the next class. And if you have any doubts, you can ask me, or else you can mark your attendance by typing it on the chat. Okay. So if you don't have any questions, we will stop it here. We'll meet on next Monday. Sorry, next Tuesday. Please mark your attendance.